The airplane touched down on Maui's sun-drenched runway, and Isabella pressed her forehead against the small window, letting the tropical breeze of imagination wash over her. The scent of salt and plumeria carried a promise of paradise. For weeks, she had pictured this moment. Her honeymoon with Mark, laughter on golden beaches, champagne at sunset, and finally a life untouched by the shadows of her past. Mark squeezed her hand, his thumb brushing hers with gentle familiarity. "We made it," he said, his voice carrying both excitement and relief. He had been waiting for this trip with a quiet intensity, the kind that came from years of carefully constructed plans. Isabella tried to smile, but a flicker of guilt tugged at her chest. Not everything is perfect, she thought, recalling the text messages she had deleted only hours before the flight. Their cab wound to the island's winding roads, palm trees swaying lazily against the backdrop of a molten orange sunset. The hotel loomed ahead, a boutique resort perched on cliffs overlooking the Pacific. Every detail had been meticulously curated. The private suite with ocean views, the orchid-strewn balcony, even the small bottle of champagne chilled in the corner. Isabella could hear the waves, rhythmic and soothing, but beneath the idyllic soundtrack, a low hum of unease grew louder. As they checked in, Isabella's eyes caught the reflection of the hotel concierge, a man whose smile felt just a little too knowing. She brushed it off, forcing herself to admire the polished floors and tropical flowers. Mark noticed her hesitation. "Everything okay?" he asked, tightening his grip on her hand. "Yes, just tired from the flight," she replied, her voice too high, too forced. The suite was a masterpiece of serenity. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened onto a balcony where the horizon seemed endless, and the scent of salt and flowers mingled in the air. Mark poured them both glasses of champagne, his laughter echoing lightly in the spacious room. "Here's to us," he said, clinking his glass against hers. Isabella nodded, swallowing her guilt with the bubbles, letting the golden light of the sunset cover her trembling hands. The room seemed too large, too quiet, almost suspiciously empty, as if holding its breath for the secrets she carried. Later, alone on the balcony, Isabella's phone buzzed. She stared at it, heart hammering. It was a message from a number she had tried to forget. "I know everything." Her stomach churned. Panic gnawed at her. She looked at the sparkling ocean, wishing she could dissolve into the waves, leaving Mark, the honeymoon, and the lies behind. But she knew she could never outrun the past. As night fell, the tropical sky deepened into indigo, and the first stars blinked awake. Mark fell asleep beside her, exhaustion pulling him into a deep slumber. Isabella remained on the balcony, phone clutched tightly, shadows of what she had done weaving around her like the gentle wind. In paradise, her secret waited, patient and dangerous. Somewhere in the hotel, unseen, eyes followed her movements. Someone knew she had arrived. Someone knew her secret. And before the honeymoon could truly begin, a quiet storm of deceit and betrayal had already started to gather, invisible but inevitable. The island whispered promises of joy, but for Isabella, every beautiful sunset carried a warning. Perfection is fragile, and secrets have a way of finding their way into the light. The perfect beginning was over before it had truly begun. The next morning, the Hawaiian sun poured into the suite, warm and golden, but Isabella felt anything but warmth. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, mind racing. The message from the night before still lingered. "I know everything." It wasn't just a threat. It was a reminder of the life she had tried to bury, a secret that had clawed its way into the present. She remembered Daniel, the man she had met months before her wedding. It had started innocently, a flirtation during a business trip, but quickly spiraled into something forbidden, intense, and suffocating. He had a way of seeing through her carefully curated facade, exposing her loneliness and weaknesses. She had justified it to herself as a moment of vulnerability. But now, with Mark beside her and the paradise of Maui stretched below, the weight of guilt pressed on her chest. Mark stretched and yawned, a slow smile forming. "Good morning, sunshine. Sleep well?" Isabella forced a smile. "Yes, well, mostly." He leaned over, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You've been quiet this morning. Something on your mind?" Her stomach twisted. Could she tell him? Should she? The words felt like fire on her tongue, dangerous and consuming. "Just thinking about work," she said finally, letting her voice falter slightly. Mark nodded, trusting her explanation. He had never doubted her before, and she knew he wouldn't start now. But the cracks in her composure betrayed her, and she hated herself for it. Later, as they walked along the beach, the gentle waves lapping at their feet, Isabella's mind wandered again. She replayed moments with Daniel. The secret lunches, the stolen glances, the thrill of danger that had made her feel alive. Now, even the sight of the sparkling ocean reminded her of deception, of lies wrapped in sunlight. A voice interrupted her spiral of memories. "Excuse me, miss. Can I help you with directions?" She turned to see a hotel staff member, clipboard in hand, eyes lingering just a little too long. The question was polite, but the scrutiny felt intrusive. Isabella smiled, forcing casual politeness. "No, thank you." As he walked away, she felt a shiver run down her spine. Everywhere she looked, she felt eyes on her, shadows of the past creeping into the present. The island's beauty felt almost suffocating, too perfect, too observant. That evening, back in the suite, she found herself alone on the balcony again. The sky had turned a deep violet, waves glowing with the reflection of the moon. Her phone buzzed, another unknown number. She hesitated, then glanced at it. A single line appeared. "We need to talk. Now." Her heart raced, panic mixed with adrenaline, a cocktail she had grown accustomed to in her secret world. She knew the messages were connected to Daniel, though she had no proof yet. The realization that her past was not buried, that someone knew the truth, made her hands shake. Mark's laughter echoed faintly from inside the room, a stark contrast to the turmoil in her mind. She wanted to run, to disappear into the night, to escape the life she had built on half-truths. But she couldn't. She was trapped by the choices she had made, and by the man waiting for her at the end of the hallway. As the stars blinked above, Isabella pressed her phone to her chest and whispered to herself, "It's not supposed to be like this, not now." Somewhere, in the quiet corners of the island, the past whispered back. It promised that secrets, no matter how carefully hidden, would always find a way into the light. And the honeymoon paradise she had imagined was already beginning to crack. The next morning, the sun rose over Maui in a blazing display of gold and pink, but Isabella felt nothing but a growing unease in her chest. She lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening to the gentle roll of waves outside the balcony. Mark's breathing was steady beside her, deep and calm, unaware that the foundation of their honeymoon, and perhaps their marriage, was quietly fracturing. Breakfast by the pool should have been a blissful affair, fruity smoothies, pastries, and the soothing hum of birdsong. But Isabella barely touched her food. Every shadow on the deck, every glimmer of sunlight on the water, seemed to carry judgment. Her mind replayed the text messages, Daniel's voice in her head, and the fear that someone was watching. Mark noticed her silence, concern etching lines on his forehead. "Isabella, are you okay? You haven't said a word since we sat down." "I'm fine," she murmured, forcing a smile. But it didn't reach her eyes. He studied her, his gaze sharp yet tender. "You're hiding something," he said finally, not accusing, but curious, hurt even in his gentle tone. Her throat tightened. How could I tell him? She wondered. How could I confess to months of betrayal without shattering everything? Instead of responding, she turned her gaze to the ocean, watching the waves curl and break. Words failed her. Silence grew heavier between them, filling the bright space like a physical weight. Later, during a hike along the cliffs, the tension between them escalated. A minor disagreement over the route sparked an argument. "Why do you always have to take the hard path?" Mark snapped, frustration breaking his calm veneer. "I thought you wanted an adventure," Isabella retorted, sharper than she intended. Mark's face fell. "This isn't about the trail. Isabella, you've been distant. Something's wrong." Her heart raced. She wanted to scream, to run, to tell him everything. But instead she bit her lip and nodded. "I'm just tired. Jet lag, that's all." He didn't press further, but the silence afterward was deafening. Every step they took felt heavy, weighed down by unspoken words and invisible tension. The ocean below, glittering under the sun, seemed to mock her, reflecting a paradise she could no longer trust. Back at the hotel, Isabella retreated to the suite while Mark unpacked their souvenirs. Her phone buzzed again, a new number this time. She froze, fingers trembling as she read the single line, "We need to meet before he finds out." Her chest tightened with panic. Before he finds out. The words were a warning, a countdown. Someone knew everything, and the honeymoon she had imagined was crumbling in real time. Mark noticed her pale face and furrowed brow. "Is everything okay?" he asked again, worry threading his voice. I think I just need some air," she said quickly, slipping out onto the balcony before he could respond. Alone, she hugged her knees to her chest, watching the waves crash violently against the cliffs. The sound mirrored her inner turmoil, chaotic, relentless, and impossible to ignore. She realized the illusion of the perfect beginning was over. The first crack in their marriage had appeared, small but unmistakable, and she knew it would widen unless the truth came out. Somewhere in the hotel, unnoticed, eyes lingered on the suite. Whispers of the past had followed her here, blending seamlessly with the tropical breeze. The honeymoon, meant to be a sanctuary, had already become a stage for secrets, lies, and the invisible threats that would soon converge. Isabella wiped her tears and took a shaky breath. She knew that the next days would test everything: trust, love, and her ability to survive the consequences of her choices. And somewhere beneath the paradise, danger waited patiently, ready to strike. The first crack had appeared, and nothing could hide the fractures that followed. By mid-morning, the hotel was alive with the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and the occasional shout of children chasing seagulls along the shoreline. Yet Isabella felt an invisible weight pressing down on her, a tension she could neither name nor escape. Every face in the crowd seemed to carry a question she didn't want answered, every glance a threat. Paradise had begun to feel like a stage where every action was scrutinized. While Mark checked in with the concierge about planned excursions, Isabella lingered near the pool, absently scanning the crowd. That's when she noticed him, a man leaning casually against a column, watching her with a quiet intensity. He was handsome, with sharp eyes and a crooked smile, but something in his gaze made her stomach clench. "Daniel," she whispered under her breath, the name tasting like smoke in her mouth. Her heart raced. She had thought she'd left him far behind, buried with secrets and regrets. Yet here he was, inexplicably near, and her panic flared. She turned quickly, hoping he hadn't noticed, but the angle of his head suggested he had. Mark approached, oblivious to her distress. "Everything okay?" he asked, taking her hand in his. "Yes, fine," Isabella lied, forcing her trembling hands to relax. As the day progressed, she couldn't shake the sense that someone was following her. The hotel staff, once just polite and professional, now seemed slightly too attentive. A housekeeper lingered near her room a little too long. A bellhop smile felt rehearsed, calculating. Even Mark noticed the tension. "You've been jumpy all day," he said, frowning. "If something's wrong, you have to tell me." I just feel out of place," she replied, trying to sound casual. But deep down, she knew she was lying. Someone had found her secrets, and every stranger in paradise could be a threat. Later, at the beach, Isabella tried to distract herself with the turquoise waves and the scent of salt on the breeze. That's when another stranger approached, a local tour guide, cheerful but observant, offering personalized excursions around the island. "You two looking for adventure?" he asked. His accent was soft, almost musical, but there was an underlying sharpness in his eyes, as if he saw more than he let on. Mark smiled. "Yes, actually. Do you recommend snorkeling?" The guide nodded, but his gaze lingered on Isabella a fraction too long. She felt a shiver run down her spine. The beauty of the island, the glittering sand, the swaying palms, the endless horizon, suddenly felt like a trap. Every friendly gesture hid a question, every smile masked suspicion. By evening, they returned to their suite, exhausted from the sun and the tension of the day. Isabella stood on the balcony, looking out over the twinkling lights of the distant shoreline. The warmth of the day had faded, replaced by a creeping sense of vulnerability. Her phone vibrated again, a text from an unknown number. "You can't hide. Not here." Her heart pounded. Someone was watching. Someone knew. And Daniel, or whoever he had enlisted, was closer than she imagined. Mark stepped onto the balcony, noticing her pale face. "Isabella, please talk to me." She shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "I can't. Not yet." The night descended with the sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below, the stars shimmering indifferently above. Paradise, once a dream, now felt like a carefully constructed prison. Strangers had infiltrated their honeymoon, shadows lurking among the beauty, and Isabella knew the calm would not last. The island was not as empty as it seemed, and in paradise, danger often arrived disguised as strangers. The morning sunlight spilled across the suite, golden and unrelenting, as if it were a spotlight meant to reveal every secret hidden in the shadows. Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, phone trembling in her hands. Another message had arrived overnight, but this one was different. A photo of her with Daniel, taken months ago, smiling too intimately, too knowingly. Her chest tightened. Panic surged like a tidal wave. She had always feared exposure, but now it was no longer a threat. It was a reality, and Mark, blissfully unaware until now, would be the first to see it. Mark stirred, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Morning. Something wrong?" Isabella froze. She could feel the walls closing in, the golden sunlight amplifying her shame. She opened the message, showing him the photo. Mark blinked. Then his expression changed, confusion twisting into disbelief, and finally, an eruptive storm of hurt. "Is this true?" he demanded, voice low and trembling, a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Isabella's throat closed. I can explain," she whispered, each word heavier than the last. "You can explain this." His voice cracked. "We're supposed to be on our honeymoon. Isabella, how long has this been going on? How many lies have I been living with?" Her mind raced, desperate to find words that wouldn't shatter him further. "It was months ago, before we married. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" he interrupted sharply. His fists clenched on the bed frame. "You call betrayal a mistake? I trusted you with everything. Everything." She flinched at the raw intensity of his grief. "I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, Mark. I do. It was a moment of weakness, a lapse. Love?" He laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have hidden it. You wouldn't have let it linger in your life, like a shadow waiting to destroy us." Tears stung Isabella's eyes. The room felt impossibly small, suffocating under the weight of their words. Outside, the ocean shimmered innocently, mocking the chaos within the suite. Mark turned abruptly and grabbed his keys. "I need to clear my head. I can't do this here. Not now." He stormed out, leaving Isabella crumpled on the bed, her hands shaking, guilt and fear battling in equal measure. She pressed her face into her knees, wishing she could disappear into the sunlit waves below. By noon, the truth had spread beyond the suite. A social media post had gone viral, a photo tag with her full name in the caption. "Secrets have a way of surfacing. Some betrayals can't be hidden." She stared at the screen in disbelief, watching messages pour in from strangers, friends, and colleagues, all dissecting her life, speculating about her choices. The hotel staff now looked at her with subtle judgment. Even the tour guide, who had seemed harmless yesterday, now avoided her gaze. Each smile felt forced, each glance heavy with curiosity. Paradise had transformed into a cage of exposure and shame. Isabella's phone buzzed again, a text from Daniel. "I told you. Now you can't hide." Her stomach churned. She had tried to bury the affair, to escape the consequences, but the past was no longer pliable. It had erupted into the present, dragging Mark, herself, and everyone around her into the chaos. That evening, Mark returned, quieter now, but his eyes burned with intensity that made Isabella's skin crawl. He didn't speak immediately. He only stared at her, waiting, demanding the truth in the silence between words. I never meant for this to happen," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't just hurt me," he replied softly, yet each word carried the weight of betrayal. You've destroyed the illusion of everything we planned. The honeymoon, us, it's all exposed now, and I don't know if we can fix it." Isabella swallowed hard. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the suite bathed in the dim, uncertain light of dusk. Shadows stretched long across the floor, mirroring the growing tension in her chest. The paradise she had dreamed was gone, replaced by suspicion, anger, and the gnawing dread of what would come next. Outside, the island seemed calm, indifferent, its beauty untouched. But Isabella knew better now. In the sunlight, secrets had been revealed, trust had been shattered, and the world she had carefully built was teetering on the edge of ruin. And somewhere in the shadows, eyes watched, waiting for the next move. The stage was set, and the honeymoon was over. The night had fallen over Maui, draping the island in a velvet darkness punctuated by twinkling lights and the distant crash of waves. From a balcony of their suite, Isabella could see the ocean stretching into infinity, a mirror to the emptiness she now felt inside. Every step of the past 24 hours, the exposure of her affair marked silent rage. The relentless social media scrutiny had culminated in a pressure that felt like it might crush her. Mark sat in the suite, quiet, nursing a glass of untouched wine. His expression was a mixture of grief, anger, and confusion, the kind of gaze that pierced through lies and half-truths. He hadn't spoken much since returning from the dinner, where they had barely managed to eat, and Isabella didn't blame him. Words could no longer mend what had been shattered. She needed air, needed space, needed to disappear, if only for a moment. Pulling on her light jacket, she stepped out onto the balcony, letting the warm tropical breeze wash over her, carrying with it the scent of salt and plumeria. But the air felt thick, heavy, as though the night itself was watching, waiting for her to make a wrong move. She took a slow, deliberate step down to the garden path, her flip-flops making soft thuds against the polished stones. The hotel lights glimmered like fireflies, and somewhere in the distance, a security guard walked his routine route. Isabella's heart thumped in her chest, not with fear of the guard, but with the unshakable knowledge that someone else, someone closer, was watching. A text buzzed on her phone, lighting up the darkness in her hand. It was from an unknown number. "You can't hide." Not tonight. Her breath caught. Panic prickled at the edges of her consciousness. She tucked the phone into her pocket, trying to steady her nerves. But the message had done its work. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to leave, to vanish. And for the first time that night, she realized the fantasy of her honeymoon was over. Isabella wandered to the hotel grounds, each step careful, measured, and deliberate. She passed the infinity pool, where lights reflected off the water like molten gold. Couples laughed, unaware of the storm gathering in the shadows, unaware of the woman who walked among them, carrying a secret that had become too heavy to bear. Then she heard it, a faint shuffle, almost imperceptible. Her pulse quickened. She glanced over her shoulder, but the path was empty. Still, the feeling of being watched intensified, prickling her skin, igniting fear that felt primal and suffocating. She reached the cliffside path, a secluded stretch that overlooked the endless expanse of the Pacific. The wind whipped her hair around her face, the sound of waves crashing against jagged rocks below echoing like distant thunder. Isabella leaned against a railing, trying to catch her breath, but every nerve in her body screamed that she was not alone. Mark had stepped out onto the balcony behind her, without her noticing, his voice trembling but low. "Isabella, come back. Please." She turned, her eyes wide with desperation. I need to be alone, Mark, just for a little while." "Alone?" His jaw tightened. "After everything? You can't just—" She cut him off, shaking her head. "You don't understand. You don't understand what it feels like to have everything you've ever wanted crumble in hours. I need to think. I need—" Her words were swallowed by the wind, lost against the roar of the ocean. And in that moment, as Mark reached for her, she stepped forward, not fully aware of what she was doing. One moment, she was there. The next, she was gone. Mark's shout pierced the night as he ran to the cliff's edge, scanning desperately. "Isabella." His voice broke, carried by the wind, but no answer came. Only the sound of waves crashing violently against the rocks below. Inside the suite, Her phone lay abandoned on the bed. Texts from unknown numbers continued to flash on the screen. Threats, warnings, the relentless pulse of exposure. By the time security and hotel staff arrived, Isabella had vanished. Footprints led only so far, fading into the sand in jagged paths, as if she'd been swallowed by the island itself. Panic set in, not just for Mark, but for everyone connected to her, directly or indirectly. Somewhere in the shadows, Daniel watched. Somewhere in the darkness, the consequences of her secrets began to spiral, reaching out to everyone who had been involved. The perfect paradise had become a hunting ground, and Isabella's disappearance was the first act of a story that was far from over. The vanishing hour had arrived, and with it, the calm of the honeymoon ended forever. By the time the sun rose over Maui the next morning, the honeymoon suite was empty in more ways than one. Mark sat slumped on the edge of bed, his hands gripping his face as exhaustion and panic waged war in his chest. Isabella was gone, vanished without a trace, and the hotel staff could offer nothing but puzzled stares and half-hearted reassurances. Every shadow in the room seemed to carry her absence like a weight, a reminder of the secrets that had exploded in the sunlight. Detectives arrived mid-morning. 2 uniformed officers followed by a plainclothes investigator, their presence filling the suite with a quiet intensity. Notebooks, pens, and cameras emerged like instruments of judgment, ready to dissect every detail of the last 48 hours. Mr. Hawthorne, one of them said, voice professional but firm, "We need a full statement about the events leading up to your wife's disappearance." Mark nodded numbly, his voice hoarse. "It started before the honeymoon, but she's gone now. I don't know where she—" The detective scribbled notes rapidly. "We'll need to know about her friends, colleagues, anyone she might have been in contact with recently. Even details you think are irrelevant could help." As they questioned him, Mark's mind drifted back to the messages Isabella had received, the cryptic warnings from unknown numbers. Someone knew. Someone was waiting. He recounted the affair, the public exposure, and the strange strangers that had appeared during their stay. The detectives listened, occasionally exchanging glances, but their faces revealed nothing. Meanwhile, officers began canvassing the hotel discreetly. The concierge, who had seemed overly attentive the day before, was interviewed. Housekeeping staff, maintenance workers, even a tour guide who had offered excursions were all questioned, their statements overlapping and sometimes contradicting one another. Each confession peeled back layers of suspicion, revealing a web of lies, half-truths, and half-remembered details. One of the officers handed Mark a phone. "Your wife's phone. It was found in the room." Mark's stomach turned as he scrolled through the messages, threats, cryptic lines, and one from Daniel, the man who had haunted Isabella's past. "I told you it would catch up. Now you can't run." The detective cleared his throat. "It seems your wife's disappearance may not be random. There are connections here, personal, emotional, possibly even dangerous." Mark shook his head, disbelief etched across his face. "I don't understand. She didn't deserve this. She didn't—" His voice faltered. "Sometimes the people we think we know best hide things, even from themselves," the investigator said quietly. "Secrets can be powerful and deadly." Back in the suite, Isabella's belongings were carefully cataloged. Each suitcase, every article of clothing, even her untouched wedding dress was examined. Officers photographed the balcony, the garden path, and the cliffside trail where she had been last seen. Small clues, a single torn petal, a footprint in damp sand, hinted at movement, but nothing concrete emerged. Mark wandered the suite aimlessly, memories of laughter and sunlight now replaced by fear and suspicion. He remembered Isabella on the balcony that night, phone in hand, pale against the shadows. The thought of her vulnerability, the knowledge that someone had orchestrated these events, gnawed at him. The detectives left him alone for a moment, and he sank into the chair by the window, staring out at the waves. He realized that every smile, every encounter during their stay had been layered with secrets. Some hers, some unknown, all dangerous. The paradise that had promised escape had become a cage, each door locked by hidden motives and unsaid truths. Somewhere outside, the island moved on with indifferent calm, tourists laughing, the ocean glinting in the sun. But inside the suite, the truth simmered, dangerous and unresolved. Secrets behind closed doors had now spilled into the open, and Mark knew this was only the beginning. The investigation had started, but the story of betrayal, obsession, and exposure was far from over. The shadows of the past, the whispers of the unknown, and the danger lurking in the corners were waiting, and nothing would ever be the same again. The days following Isabella's disappearance stretched endlessly, each one heavier than the last. Maui, with sun-drenched beaches and swaying palms, felt like a surreal stage set, beautiful yet cruelly indifferent. For Mark, every hour brought new torment, a relentless reminder of the secrets he had only just begun to understand, and the woman he thought he knew who had vanished into thin air. Sleep came in fractured moments, haunted by images of Isabella on the cliffside, phone in hand, looking terrified or lost in the shadows. The detectives were methodical, but their calm efficiency only highlighted the chaos consuming him. Every new lead seemed to uncover another layer of deception. Texts from unknown numbers, fleeting sightings reported by tourists, whispers of Daniel's obsession, and fragment of Isabella's private messages revealing the depth of her guilt. Mark wandered the suite aimlessly, picking up her abandoned belongings. A folded dress, a half-used bottle of perfume, a diary hidden at the bottom of her suitcase. Each item was a relic of the life they had shared, now tainted with betrayal. He opened the diary hesitantly, skimming the pages filled with confessions, fears, and secret desires. Each word pierced him, a mix of sorrow and fury burning in his chest. She was hiding so much, he muttered aloud, his voice breaking. All this time, and I had no idea. The detectives had left, but the suite still smelled of authority and inquiry, of small, precise questions left hanging in the air. Mark felt exposed, stripped of control. He realized that in the pursuit of truth, he had been blind to the signs. The subtle glances, the whispered phone calls, the restless nights Isabella had spent pacing the balcony. At the hotel, staff members whispered behind closed doors, glancing furtively at him as if he, too, carried the weight of the scandal. Daniel's name appeared again and again, threaded through conversations and reports, his presence like a shadow that could not be shaken. The man's obsession, once distant and abstract, now felt threateningly close. Mark's phone buzzed late one night. A message appeared from an unknown number. "She's closer than you think. Watch her." He dropped the phone onto the bed, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed danger. The paranoia that had been building in Isabella now seeped into him, gnawing at his reason. The line between reality and imagination blurred. Every passerby in the hotel lobby, every whisper along the corridor, seemed connected to her disappearance, as if the island itself were conspiring. Unable to bear the suffocating tension, Mark began retracing their steps. The cliffside path, the poolside walk, the garden trails. Each location carried fragments of memory, echoes of laughter, arguments, and fleeting shadows of Isabella. But the clues were fragmented, insufficient, teasing him with glimpses of truth that refused to solidify. He remembered her eyes the night before she vanished, wide with panic, reflective of the storm inside her. The image haunted him, the fear, the guilt, and the silent plea that he had never understood until it was too late. The exposure of her affair, the messages, the strangers in paradise, all threads woven into a tapestry of chaos that threatened to consume him as well. By the end of the day, Mark sat on the balcony again, staring at the ocean, waves crashing violently below. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the cliffs, mirroring the darkness settling in his mind. He realized that the unraveling had only begun, not just of Isabella's secrets, but his own sense of stability, trust, and reality. The events of the past week had fractured him, and the pieces were sharp, jagged, and impossible to reassemble. The honeymoon was over. The paradise they had sought was gone. And as the shadows lengthened across the island, Mark understood that the truth, when it surfaced, could destroy more than just hearts. It could destroy lives. The island at dawn seemed peaceful, its turquoise waves sparkling under the first light of the sun, but the calm was deceptive. For Mark, every sound, every shadow, and every movement carried potential significance. Isabella was gone, and now the investigation had begun to unearth fragments, small, seemingly innocuous details that hinted at a hidden story far darker than he had imagined. Detectives returned to the suite with renewed urgency, evidence bags in hand. Mark watched silently as they photographed the balcony railing, measured footprints along the garden path, and examined the cliffside trail where Isabella had last been seen. Each action was meticulous, clinical, but for him, it felt like peeling back the layers of a nightmare he could not escape. "Mr. Hawthorne," one detective said, his tone calm but firm, "we've found something you should see." He led Mark to a small outbuilding near the edge of the resort property. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the sunlight barely reached the corners. On a weathered table lay a collection of items: a strand of blonde hair, a torn fabric swatch, and a notebook with pages scribbled in hurried handwriting. Mark's stomach twisted. He recognized the handwriting immediately. Isabella's. The notebook was a chaotic blend of confessions, fears, and fragmented thoughts. Names were crossed out, locations circled, cryptic notes underlined. And among the scrawled words, one name appeared repeatedly: Daniel. References to clandestine meetings, threats, and the fear of being discovered punctuated almost every page. "She kept a record of everything," Mark whispered, barely able to process the evidence. "All the warnings, the threats, all of it." The detective nodded. It appears she knew she was being watched. Someone was pressuring her. Someone close. "We're trying to track all contacts, but there are indications that she may have been in communication with more than one person who had motives to control or expose her." Mark's mind raced. Daniel had been the most obvious threat, but these notes suggested a network of danger, shadows extending further than he could see. The paranoia Isabella had felt, and he had now experienced firsthand, was real, tangible, and terrifying. Later, at the edge of the cliffs, another clue emerged. A witness, a local jogger, reported seeing a figure matching Isabella's description leaving the hotel grounds late at night, heading toward a secluded part of the island usually frequented by tourists only during the day. The witness couldn't confirm which way she went, but the observation added another layer to the puzzle. Her disappearance had been deliberate, yet someone had orchestrated it. Back at the suite, Mark pieced together what he could from the fragments: the messages, the notebook, the witness statement, and the increasing involvement of Daniel. Each clue cast shadows across his understanding of Isabella's life, revealing secrets she had carried silently, while the island itself seemed to hum with silent observation. He felt the weight of every choice, every hidden truth, pressing down on him. The paradise he had envisioned, the honeymoon, the escape, the beginning of a life together, was gone, replaced by suspicion, fear, and the unsettling realization that the people and events surrounding Isabella's disappearance were far more complex than he had imagined. Mark turned to the detective. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice trembling. The detective's expression was grave. "We follow the clues. They're small, but they lead somewhere. Every shadow, every hidden connection, it all matters. The truth is out there, and we'll find it." As he left the room, Mark's gaze lingered on the notebook, the torn fabric, and the strand of hair. Each was a testament to the secrets Isabella had carried and the dangers she had feared. And in the dim light of the island morning, he realized the search was only beginning. The shadows of the past were no longer confined to memory. They had materialized in evidence, and each clue drew him closer to a truth more terrifying than he could have imagined. The island's evening air was thick with humidity, the last rays of sunlight bleeding into the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. For Mark, every passing second had become a torturous countdown. Clues had led him here. To the cliffs on the far side of the resort, a secluded stretch of jagged rock overlooking the restless Pacific. This was where the shadows converged, where the truth waited beneath the waves. Detectives flanked him, flashlights cutting through the deepening twilight. Each step toward the cliff's edge carried the weight of months of betrayal, fear, and unanswered questions. The wind whipped across his face, salty and sharp, carrying the echo of Isabella's last messages, the frantic notes in her hidden notebook, and the lingering shadow of Daniel. "Here," one detective said, kneeling beside a faint indentation in the dirt, footprints leading dangerously close to the cliff's edge. "We believe this is where she made her final move." Mark knelt beside them, heart pounding. The prints were small, delicate, unmistakably hers. And yet, there was something in their pattern, A hesitation, a pause that suggested she had been trying to decide something impossible, between escape and surrender, between fear and courage. Suddenly, a glint caught his eye. Partially buried under sand and debris was a small, waterlogged envelope. Hands shaking, he opened it. Inside were photographs. Isabella with Daniel. The affair captured in stolen, intimate moments, and a note in her unmistakable handwriting. I cannot face the truth, not yet. He must know everything eventually, but not like this. Whoever finds this, take care of him. Take care of us. Mark's chest tightened, the weight of the confession pressing down like the waves below. She had planned this carefully, leaving clues, leaving herself in fragments for him to piece together. The envelope revealed the depth of her fear, the careful orchestration of a woman trapped between loyalty, love, and the suffocating consequences of her choices. A sudden shout drew his attention. A local fisherman pointed toward the water, a figure bobbing in the waves. Rescue teams rushed down the rocks, pulling a soaked and shivering Isabella to safety. She was alive, though exhausted, trembling in shock and fear. Mark's legs gave way as he knelt beside her, gripping her hands tightly. Isabella, you're alive. Oh, God, you're alive. Tears streaked her face. I didn't know what to do. The messages, the threats. Daniel, he wouldn't stop. I had to hide. I didn't want to hurt you any more than I already had. Detectives moved quickly, surrounding Daniel, who had been attempting to flee the scene. His obsession, his manipulation, and his role in orchestrating her fear were finally exposed. Arrested and restrained, he glared at Mark and Isabella, a venomous mix of fury and defeat. Wrapped in blankets, Isabella recounted the harrowing hours, the messages, the fear, the desperate decision to disappear into night, and the haunting realization that she could not face Daniel alone. The cliff, the waves, the solitude, they had been her only refuge. Mark listened, holding her tightly, feeling the weight of betrayal and the relief of survival intertwine. The investigation revealed the full extent of Daniel's interference. Threats, stalking, and manipulation designed to terrorize her, exploiting the secrets she carried. As night fell completely over the island, the Pacific stretched endlessly below, dark and infinite, but the storm had passed. Isabella was safe, Daniel was in custody, and Mark realized that while secrets could wound and betray, truth had a way of resurfacing, just like the waves, relentless, cleansing, and ultimately revealing. Together, standing at the cliff's edge, hand in hand, they watched the moonlight dance across the water. Paradise was still scarred by shadows, but was also alive with possibility. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, survival, love, and truth could endure. Beneath the waves, the secrets lay bare, and from them a fragile hope emerged. The aftermath of Isabella's disappearance and rescue left the island in a quiet tension, as if Maui itself was holding its breath. The waves still crashed against the cliffs, indifferent and relentless, while Mark and Isabella remained in the suite, surrounded by police, investigators, and the debris of their broken honeymoon. Paradise had lost its illusion, replaced by harsh truths and lingering shadows. Mark sat on the edge of the bed, still holding Isabella's hands, his grip a desperate attempt to anchor himself to the reality that she was alive. Her hair was damp from the rescue, her eyes wide with the exhaustion of terror and guilt, yet there was a fragile relief shining through. Neither spoke at first. Words seemed inadequate to bridge the chasm of fear, betrayal, and love that now separated and bound them simultaneously. Eventually, Isabella whispered, voice trembling, I wanted it to be perfect. Our honeymoon, our start, I never thought it would end like this. Mark's throat tightened. I know, I wanted it to be perfect too. But it's not just a honeymoon. It's us. All of this, all these secrets. The exposure, the fear, it's changed everything. She nodded, tears falling freely. I know. I betrayed you. I wanted to tell you so many times. But the messages, Daniel, I was scared. I thought if I ran, if I disappeared for a little while, I could fix it. I didn't know how to survive the truth. Mark swallowed hard, struggling with the mix of anger, heartbreak, and relief. Running doesn't erase what happened. But right now, we need to focus on what's real. You're here. You're safe. That's the start, even if it doesn't feel like it. Outside, The island seemed almost normal. Tourists laughed, waves sparkled, and the sun dipped low. But for Mark and Isabella, the world had shifted irrevocably. Their honeymoon had been marred by secrets and fear, yet survival and honesty had become a new kind beginning, however fragile. Detectives briefed them on the progress. Daniel was in custody, facing multiple charges for stalking, harassment, and the threats that had pushed Isabella to her breaking point. The investigation into the messages, the orchestrated surveillance, and the threats against her continued, but at least now the immediate danger had been removed. Isabella's hand shook as she recounted the events of that night to the investigators, how she had fled, the desperation she felt, and the haunting realization that no one else could intervene. The diary, the messages, the envelope, all had been intended to reveal the truth eventually, to protect Mark from further deception, even if it meant she had to vanish temporarily. Mark listened quietly, understanding now the complexity of her fear and the depth of the threats she had faced. "You try to protect me," he said softly. "Even in the chaos, you were thinking of us." Her lips trembled in a weak smile. "I didn't know if I could survive it, but I couldn't let Daniel destroy everything we had." As night fell, the couple sat together on the balcony, wrapped in blankets, the warm breeze mixing with the lingering scent of salt and plumeria. The moonlight shimmered across the ocean, casting long reflections over the waves. It was a quiet, fragile peace, one born from trauma, revelations, and the unshakable knowledge that paradise could be both cruel and beautiful. Mark looked at Isabella, her eyes still haunted but alive. The honeymoon we imagined, it ended, but maybe what comes next can be different. Honest. No more shadows. She nodded, squeezing his hand. "I want that too. Even if it's slow, even if it's hard, I want to try." The island around them seemed to exhale, the storm of secrets, fear, and exposure fading into memory. The honeymoon had ended, not with joy and celebration, but with survival, truth, and the fragile promise of a new beginning. Paradise had been tested, hearts had been broken, and secrets had been revealed. But in the quiet aftermath, the possibility of healing glimmered faintly, like moonlight across restless waves.